Right now, this very second, you are taller than you are going to be tonight. I do not mean because you are slouching, and I do not mean because you will be tired later and let your shoulders drop. I mean it as a physical fact about your body, measurable with a ruler. You are shrinking. You have been shrinking since the moment you climbed out of bed this morning, and you will keep shrinking until you lie down again. Nobody rings a bell to tell you this. There is no little light on your chest that blinks. But somewhere in the stack of bones running up your back, water is being pressed out slowly, drop by drop, every single time you stand up, sit down, or just hold your own heavy head up against the pull of the earth. Let me put a number on it, because the number is what makes you sit up. In the year 1984, 3 fellows did an experiment where they measured the height of 8 grown men carefully all day long, and they found that a person is about 19 millimeters taller at the top of the day than at the bottom of it. That is almost 2 centimeters. Call it 3/4 of an inch. You are shorter at midnight than you were at 7:30 in the morning, and the difference is roughly the width of your thumb. And here is the part that ought to bother you a little. In a good way, it is not your muscles doing that, and it is not your bones changing shape. Bone does not squish. The thing that is getting squeezed is plain old water, in a plain old hydraulic machine running on exactly the same physics that lifts your car when you pump the little jack in the trunk. So I want to take you down inside that machine. I want to go all the way down into one little disc buried between 2 of your backbones and figure out 3 things. What exactly is getting squeezed? Where the water goes when it leaves. And why the very last thing you do tonight, right before you fall asleep, might decide how much of that water you actually get back before morning. Let us start simple, the way you should always start. Feel your own spine for a second. It is a stack. Little bones, one on top of the other, from your hips up to your skull, more than 30 of them. Now, if those bones just sat directly on each other, bone grinding on bone, you would not be able to bend, and every footstep would ring up your back like a hammer on an anvil. So nature does not do that. Between each pair of bones there is a little cushion, a pad. We call it a disc, and that word, disc, makes you think of something hard and flat, like a coin or a hockey puck, and that is the wrong picture. Throw that picture away. Here is the right picture. Each disc is more like a little water balloon that has been squashed into a short cylinder and wedged between the 2 bones. In the very middle of it there is a soft, wet, jelly-like core. The anatomists gave it a fancy Latin name, the nucleus pulposus, which just means the pulpy center, and pulpy is exactly right. This core is mostly water. Somewhere between 2/3 and in a young healthy disc, more than 8/10 of it, by volume, is water. If you could scoop it out and hold it in your hand, it would be a wet gel, like the inside of a very firm jellyfish, or like the gelatin dessert that never quite set. Now, why does that matter? Why fill the most important cushion in your body with something as floppy as water? Because water has a marvelous property that a solid pad does not have. You cannot squeeze it. Push down on water and it does not get smaller. It just shoves sideways. Try it in the bathtub. Press your palm flat on the surface and the water does not compress under your hand. It squirts out around the edges of your fingers. That is the whole trick. That is the secret of the disc, and it is the secret of every hydraulic machine ever built. Let me show you what that trick buys you. Imagine you push straight down on the top of this little water balloon. The push is going one direction, straight down the way gravity pulls. But the water inside cannot go down, because the bone below is in the way, and it cannot get smaller, because water never does. So the pressure you put in at the top spreads out in every direction at once equally, pushing outward on all the walls. The downward squash from your body weight gets turned, right there, into an outward push on the sides of the disc. Straight down force becomes push out everywhere pressure. A great French thinker worked this out a long time ago as a law of fluids. Press on a trapped fluid anywhere, and that pressure shows up everywhere inside it. The same in all directions. Your spine has been quietly obeying that law your whole life. But now you have a new problem, and it is a good one. The kind of problem that tells you nature had to be clever. If the water is pushing outward on the walls in every direction, what stops the disc from just bulging out and bursting, like a balloon you have stepped on. Something has to hold that pressure in. Something has to grab the water and refuse to let it blow out sideways. That something is the wall of the disc, and the wall is a little masterpiece of engineering. Wrapped around that wet core there is a thick ring, a casing, built out of layer upon layer of tough fiber. Not one layer, 15, 20, sometimes 25 layers, stacked one inside the next like the rings of an onion, or like the plywood on a good workbench. And here is the beautiful part. The fibers in each layer run at a slant, a diagonal, at about 60 degrees, and the very next layer runs its fibers slanted the other way, crossing over the first like a lattice, like the crisscross fence in a garden, like the weave in a strong basket. Layer this way, layer that way, this way, that way, all the way around. Why cross them like that? Because when the water pushes outward, it is trying to stretch that wall in two ways at once. It is trying to push the top and bottom apart, and it is trying to make the whole ring balloon out fat around the middle. Crossed fibers catch both of those pulls at the same time, and the fibers going around the ring take up what an engineer would call hoop stress, and that word tells you the whole story, because it is the exact same idea as the metal hoops hammered around a wooden barrel. Think about a barrel of water for a second, because this is worth slowing down on. The water inside pushes out on the wooden staves, trying to spring them apart and spill everything on the floor. What holds the barrel together? Not the wood, really. The iron hoops wrapped around it. Each hoop is a closed loop, and to burst it, you would have to actually stretch that iron, and iron does not want to stretch. So the loops just sit there in tension, silently holding thousands of pounds of push, and the barrel stays a barrel. The same thing keeps a boiler from exploding and a pressurized pipe from splitting. The wall does not resist the pressure by being stiff and thick like a brick. It resists by being a loop under tension. Your disc is a barrel. The wet core is the water, and those crossed collagen rings are the hoops, and every time you stand up, those hoops go tight and hold the line. So already, before we have measured a single thing, you can see the whole design. A pouch of water that will not compress, turning your weight into outward pressure, wrapped in a woven ring that catches that pressure as tension and refuses to burst. It is a hydraulic cushion. It is a shock absorber with no moving parts, and you have got more than 20 of them stacked up your back, sharing the load, letting you bend and twist and jump and still not shatter your own spine when you hop off the last step of the staircase. Now, whenever I tell you a story like this, a nice clean story about how something works, you should get a little suspicious. Because it is one thing for me to stand here and wave my arms and say the pressure goes up when you stand and down when you lie down. It is another thing entirely to know. To actually know, you would have to get inside a living disc in a living person and measure the pressure while they go about an ordinary day. Standing, sitting, bending, lifting a bag of groceries. And you would think, well, nobody is going to do that. Nobody is going to volunteer to have a hole made in their back so a physicist can read a gauge. Somebody did. And what they measured is stranger and more exact than any hand-waving story I could give you, so let me take you into that room next and show you the actual numbers that came off a needle buried in a man's spine. Picture the room. It is Germany, the tail end of the 1990s, and there is a man lying on a table. He is 45 years old. He weighs about 70 kilograms, an ordinary fellow, nothing special about his back. And a team of researchers has done something that makes me wince just to describe it. They have taken a tiny pressure sensor, a little transducer, about 1.5 millimeters across, and they have slid it through a needle right into the soft core of one of his discs, the one down low, between the 4th and 5th bones of the lumbar spine, what they call L4, L5. That little gauge is now sitting inside the jelly, and it is wired up to send its readings out by radio. Telemetry, like a signal from a spacecraft, except the spacecraft is a man's lower back. And then they do the most wonderful thing. They do not keep him on the table. They let him get up and live for about a day. Walk around, sit in a chair, bend over, pick things up, and the whole time that needle is whispering the pressure out to a machine. So what does it say? Lie him down flat on his belly and the gauge reads about 1/10 of a megapascal. Roll him onto his side and it barely twitches, about 12 hundredths. That is the floor. That is about as gentle as it gets for a human disc that is still attached to a living, breathing person. Now stand him up. Just stand him up, relaxed, doing nothing. The number jumps to about half a megapascal. Do you feel the size of that? Simply defying gravity, holding your own bones up in a line, quintuples the squeeze on that jelly compared to lying down. You are paying a tax just for being vertical, and you pay it all day and you never feel the bill. It gets better, and by better I mean worse. Sit him down in a chair without back support, slouched, and it climbs to around 46 hundredths, nearly as bad as standing. That surprises people. They think sitting is resting. Your disc does not agree. Now have him sit and lean forward, curl over the way you do reading something in your lap. 83 hundredths. Have him stand and bend forward at the waist. Over 1 whole megapascal, more than 10 times the flat on your belly number. And then the finale. Hand him a weight, about 20 kilograms, a good heavy suitcase, and let him lift it the wrong way, with his back rounded and bent. The needle screams out 2.3 megapascals. 23 times the resting pressure. Inside a piece of your own body, from lying down to lifting badly, the pressure swings by a factor of more than 20. There is no gauge on the dashboard for it. Your spine just quietly absorbs the whole range, every single day. Now here is the little detail from that same experiment that I love the most, because it is the one nobody expects. When the man finally went to sleep, lying down for the night, you would think the pressure would drop right back to that lovely low belly down number, 1/10. It did not. Overnight it sat at about 24 hundredths of a megapascal, roughly double the quietest lying down reading. Why? Because even asleep you are not a sack of flour. Your muscles keep a low hum of tension going. You shift, you turn, you curl, you throw an arm over. The body never fully lets go. So even your rest is not total rest. The disc gets a break at night, a real one, but it is a discount, not a holiday. Hold on to that fact, because it is going to come back and bite us later in a way you will not see coming. All right, so we have these pressures, and we have this jelly full of water getting squeezed, and now you should be asking the obvious nagging question. If you spend all day, every day, standing and sitting and bending, pressing on this thing at half a megapascal and up, and water gets squeezed out of a squeezed sponge, then why on earth is there any water left in the disc at all? Why hasn't it been wrung dry years ago, like a mop somebody stepped on and forgot? By rights, that jelly should have given up its water in your 20s and left you a flat, dry wafer between the bones. It doesn't. Something is pulling the water back in. Something is fighting the squeeze. And to see what it is, we have to go down into the chemistry of the jelly itself. Inside that core are big, bushy molecules. The main one goes by the name agricane, and I want you to picture it like a bottle brush, the kind you clean a baby's bottle with, a central stem with thousands of bristles sticking out. Now the crucial thing about those bristles is that they are covered in fixed electric charge, all of it negative. Negative charge, packed in tight, all crowded together and unable to move away because it is chained to the molecule. And negative charges hate each other. They shove each other apart. More than that, all that trapped negative charge does something to the water around it. It creates a thirst. A chemical thirst we call osmotic pressure. Let me give you the feel of osmosis without any equations, because the feel is the whole thing. Imagine a crowded room with a rope down the middle, and on one side of the rope you have crammed a huge crowd of people who cannot leave. They are stuck there. On the other side, hardly anybody. Now open a little door in the rope that lets only water molecules through, not the big stuck crowd. What happens? Water floods toward the crowded side, trying to even things out, trying to dilute that packed crowd. It will keep pushing water in until the sheer pressure of all that extra water shoves back hard enough to stop it. That pushing in force is osmotic pressure, and in your disc it is generated by all those trapped negative charges begging for water to come dilute them. The strength of that thirst in the disc sits somewhere around 420 to 450 on the scale the chemists use, and it is aimed in exactly the opposite direction from gravity's squeeze. Gravity presses down and tries to wring the water out. The chemistry pulls in and tries to suck the water back. Your disk height, your height, is nothing but the score in this tug of war measured moment by moment. And here is the thing about the tug of war. During the day, gravity wins. The compressive pressure of standing and sitting, that half a megapascal and up, is simply bigger than the osmotic thirst pulling water back. So water leaks out of the disk faster than the chemistry can drag it back in. Not fast. Slowly. Drip by drip, over hours. And every drop that leaves makes the disk a hair thinner, and there are 23 of these disks stacked up your spine, and the thinning adds up, bone creeping down toward bone all the way up the tower. That, and nothing more mysterious than that, is why you are shorter tonight than you were this morning. You did not compress your bones. Bone does not squish. You wrung out 23 little water balloons a fraction of a millimeter each, and the fractions added up to something you could measure with a ruler. And people did measure it with a ruler. Go back to the early 1980s. 8 grown men and a rig for measuring stature, standing height, very carefully, again and again through the day. And what they found is one of my favorite numbers in all of this. Over the course of a day, from the tallest they ever were to the shortest they ever were, these men changed height by about 19.3 millimeters. Call it 2 centimeters. Roughly 1 1/10% of their whole standing height, appearing and vanishing every single day, silently. And not one of them could feel it happening. You are, at this instant, whatever height you are, and by midnight you will have quietly shed close to an inch of it into the fluid mechanics of your own back. When were they tallest? 7:30 in the morning, right after getting up. When were they shortest? Midnight, at the bottom of the day, just before sleep. So the arc of your height traces the arc of your day. You rise from the pillow at your tallest, a rehydrated tower, and you sag downward hour by hour until you are at your smallest right when you crawl back into bed. And then, in the dark, unloaded, the chemistry finally gets to win. The thirst pulls water back in, the disks plump up, the tower rises again, and you wake tall to do the whole thing over. But look closer at the timing, because the timing hides a beautiful asymmetry. Those same men got back about 71% of their whole night's height gain in just the first half of the night. The rehydration front loads. The disk is thirstiest, drinks fastest, right when you first lie down and take the load off, and then it slows as it fills, and in the morning it runs in reverse, brutally fast. They lost more than half of the entire day's shrinkage within one single hour of getting up. 1 hour of standing around at breakfast undoes half the gift the whole night gave you. So the reset is real, but it is lopsided. Easy come in the first hour of rest, easy go in the first hour of rising. And that lopsidedness is a clue, a loose thread, and if you pull on it gently, a very uncomfortable question starts to come out of the fabric. If the disk fills fast but empties fast too, and you spend far more of your life loaded than unloaded, then does the tower ever really truly get all the way back up? Or are you carrying a small, permanent, unpaid debt from one night to the next, night after night, for years? Let us pull on that thread and see what unravels. So here is the ugly little truth the laboratory hands us, and I want you to sit with it. When you put a piece of disk tissue in a press and you load it, it settles down into its new squash shape pretty quickly. It knows how to lose water. But when you take the weight off and ask it to drink back up, it dawdles. Unloading takes longer than loading. The tissue is fast to give and slow to receive. And now stack that against how you actually spend a day. You are up and loaded for something like 16 hours. You are lying down and unloaded for maybe 8. So the fast process gets twice the running time as the slow process, and the slow process is the one that needs more time, not less. You have handed the emptying job a big head start and given the filling job the short end of the stick. Put those two facts together, and the answer to our uncomfortable question falls right out. No, the tower does not get all the way back up. Not fully. Not every night. In the body, the disk lives closer to its loaded, squeezed-down state than to its plump, fully drunk state, even after a whole night flat on your back. Morning you is taller than midnight you, yes, but morning you is not the theoretical maximum. There is always a little water it never quite finishes reabsorbing before you stand up and start pressing it out again. The reset is real, and it is beautiful, and it is also permanently, structurally behind schedule. You are running a hydraulic system that never gets to finish its own refill cycle. Not tonight, not tomorrow, not once in your whole life on this planet. And that phrase is the trapdoor. On this planet. Because everything I have told you, every number, every pressure, every millimeter of lost height, has one thing standing behind it, doing all the pushing. Gravity. It is the weight of your own head and ribs and shoulders bearing down through the stack hour after hour that drives water out faster than osmosis can pull it back. So let me ask the mischievous question. What if we simply took gravity away? Not slowed it down. Removed it. Let the disc off the hook entirely and let that slow, patient, osmotic thirst run with nothing pushing against it at all. What does the spine do then? We have the answer, and it is not a thought experiment. We flew a man named Scott Kelly around the Earth for 340 days aboard the International Space Station, and up there his spine weighed nothing. No column of body pressing down. The osmotic pull inside those discs finally got to work uncontested, drinking, swelling, plumping every disc in the stack past the size it could ever reach down here. And he grew, roughly 2 inches taller, about 5 centimeters. The very same mechanism that gives you your 1 silent centimeter every morning, unchained from gravity, ran and ran until it added an inch to each end of a grown man. NASA watched it happen, by the way. A team led by a researcher named Scott Dolchowski had the astronauts scanning each other's spines with ultrasound at 30 days, at 90 days, at 150 days into their missions, tracking the discs swelling in real time. Push the number all the way, and astronauts can gain up to about 3% of their height. For somebody 6 feet tall, that is your 2 inches, just from letting the water win. Now here is the part I love. The part that snaps the whole picture shut like a lock. When Scott Kelly came back down and stood up on the Earth again, how long did it take gravity to collect its debt? Not months. Not weeks. About 2 days. 2 days back under his own weight, and he was right back to his ordinary height. Gravity does not forget. It squeezed that 5 centimeters of water back out almost as fast as a year in space had let it in. So the astronaut is not some exotic special case. The astronaut is you, with the volume turned all the way up. Same disks, same thirsty molecules, same fluid squeezed out and drawn back in. The only difference between your quiet nightly centimeter and his dramatic 2 inches is how long you get to keep the weight off. He got a year. You get about 8 hours. That is the entire difference. So the physics is settled, and it is gorgeous. And this is exactly the moment when somebody tries to sell you something. You have surely seen the machines, straps, tables, contraptions that hang you or stretch you and promise to decompress your spine and reset your discs and pull that lost height back like magic. Well, let us be honest, because the honesty is more interesting than the sales pitch. Pull on the spine and yes, you lower the pressure in the disc, and the physics of that is perfectly sound, and the evidence is genuinely mixed, so I will not pretend it is cleaner than it is. One careful trial of manual traction did find real relief for people with lower back and lumbosacral pain. But when you gather up the broader reviews, the honest verdict is modest. Traction tends to give some short-term easing of pain, and that is about the size of it. What it does not do, what no strap or table has been shown to do, is reverse a worn-out, degenerated disc or suck a herniation back into place. You can unload a disc for a while. You cannot unage it by hanging from a bar. The stretch is temporary. The debt comes back the moment you stand up, same as it did for the man returning from space. Which brings us, finally, all the way back down to the ground, to your own bedroom, to the actual question in the title. If gravity is going to squeeze you all day no matter what, and the machines are mostly theater, then what is the one thing your spine genuinely wants from you in that last minute before sleep? It is not a gadget. It is a decision. It is which shape you hand the stack for the next 8 hours, because that is 8 hours the water finally gets to do its quiet work, and you want the tower straight while it does. Lie on your back and slip a pillow under your knees, just enough to let the lower spine settle into its natural curve instead of fighting it. Or lie on your side and put a firm pillow between your knees so your hips and pelvis stay square and the whole column stays honestly aligned. Both of those keep the stack neutral, unkinked, evenly fed while it rehydrates. And there is one shape to refuse. Do not sleep on your stomach. When you lie face down, you flatten out the spine's natural curve and crank the neck to the side, and you spend the entire refill cycle holding the tower in a slightly wrung shape. It is the one position that fights the very reset you lay down to get. So the last thing your spine should do before you sleep is not to be stretched or cracked or hung from anything. It is simply to be laid down straight and left alone and trusted to drink. Think about what that means. Every single night, without a thought from you, without a single instruction, that stack of little water balloons quietly pulls fluid back in and lifts you up off the mattress a full centimeter taller than you lay down. And every single morning, within the first hour that you stand, gravity leans back in and starts collecting. Up in the dark, down in the light, up, down, a slow tide running through your own bones that you have been riding your whole life and very likely never once felt. You cannot win it. The debt never fully clears, but you get to choose. Tonight and every night, whether you lie down and let the tide come in clean or whether you fight it. So the next time you stand up in the morning and feel for 1 second just slightly taller than you remember being, do not shrug it off. That is water and osmosis and the weight of the whole world all arguing over you in the dark and losing to you gently for 1 more centimeter, 1 more day.